So, what is a species? In the biological species concept, a species is defined as a population whose members can interbreed and produce viable, fertile offspring who are reproductively compatible. Species are created by a series of evolutionary processes, such as that which happens when populations become isolated, either geographically or reproductively. Isolated populations evolve independently. The two types of isolation are allopatric, when populations are separated geographically, and sympatric, when the populations still live in the same area. Pre-reproduction barriers are obstacles to mating or to fertilization before reproduction occurs. There are 6 types of pre-reproduction barriers: geographical isolation, ecological isolation, temporal isolation, behavioral isolation, mechanical isolation, and gametic isolation. In geographic isolation, species inhabit different areas and are separated by a physical barrier. This is a form of allopatric speciation. An example of this is how Harris's antelope squirrel inhabits the Grand Canyon's south rim, while just a few miles away on the north rim lives the closely related white-tailed antelope squirrel. In ecological isolation, species inhabit the same region but occupy different habitats, so they rarely encounter each other. These animals are reproductively isolated. For example, in India, lions and tigers inhabit the same region, but because they occupy different habitats, they do not reproduce together. For temporal isolation, species cannot mix gametes because they breed during different times of day, seasons, or years. This is a type of reproductive isolation and sympatric speciation. One such example is the blue spiderwort and zigzag spiderwort. In behavioral isolation, unique behavioral patterns and rituals isolate species. These behavioral patterns help to identify members of species and attract mates of the same species, such as by courtship rituals and mating calls. This is a form of reproductive isolation. An example of this is when two similar species of birds develop different mating calls, preventing them from reproducing together. Mechanical isolation is a type of reproductive isolation where morphological differences can prevent successful mating. An example of this is when a male Chihuahua attempts to mate with a female Great Dane. Gametic isolation is when sperm of one species may not be able to fertilize eggs of another species. The mechanisms include biochemical barrier, which prevents sperm from penetrating the egg, and chemical incompatibility, where sperm cannot survive in the female reproductive tract. Post-reproductive barriers are what prevent hybrid offspring from developing into a viable, fertile adult. Post-reproductive barriers include reduced hybrid viability and fertility, and hybrid breakdown. Reduced hybrid viability is when genes of different parent species may interact and impair the hybrid's development. Even if hybrid are vigorous, reduced hybrid fertility likely occurs, meaning that they may be sterile. This is because chromosomes of parents may differ in number or structure, and meiosis in hybrid may fail to produce normal gametes. An example is how, although horses and zebras can create a living offspring, the zebroid is usually sterile. Hybrid breakdown states that although hybrids may be fertile and viable in the first generation, the offspring they create are feeble or sterile. An example is the liger, which is sterile and experiences breakdown due to overly rapid growth. Gradualism is gradual divergence over long spans of time, and it assumes that big changes occur as the accumulation of many small ones. The other main theory of speciation is punctuated equilibrium, which assumes that rate of speciation is not constant. It is characterized by rapid bursts of change and long periods of little or no change. The species undergo rapid change when they first bud from the parent population.